So on to securing the Dataverse. This is what we'll cover. I forgot how big a topic this really was. So we're going to look at business units. I'll take you through some slides first. So we'll go through each of these topics and explain a bit about them. And then I've set up a demo environment with some users in it, and we'll look at assigning security roles, etc. Any questions, just raise them in the chat and I'll pick them all up at the end of the session. Just saying we haven't edit things out and stuff. Once the camera stops, we'll answer questions and have a discussion about it. So we'll look at business units, users and teams, security roles, access, teams, column level security, hierarchy security, and data loss prevention policies. Now those last two, hierarchy security and data loss prevention policies, I'm really just going to, on the technical demo, I'll show you where they are and how to get to them. The rest of them I'll try and take you through examples, because like I said, there's quite a lot in there. So we'll start off with business units. Business units, to configure an installation, you start by creating business units, and you create they automatically create the root business unit for you. And your business security roles define what business units and security roles define the organizational structure. So when the Dataverse is deployed, the setup creates the root business unit that represents the primary organizational unit for the implementation. And that includes a set of default security roles, and again, we'll look at those default security roles in a second. Now, you can create security roles within any of the child business units, but any security role you create in the parent business unit also gets created and gets managed in the child business unit. So I tend to always just create them in the root business unit at the top level. And every single user and team sits within a business unit. So you assign users to these business units, and they sit underneath them, and that's how we organize our security. And we'll show you some examples in that second. So a typical business unit structure might look like this. You can have the CEOs at the top there. You've got HR and finance and sales on the second level. So the CEOs would have a view of the whole organization. HR and finance could maybe sit separately because they might have access to personal details. And then sales managers might sit within the sales team, and then within the sales business unit, and then you'd have maybe your sales teams underneath, because the sales teams might be competitive, in which case you don't want them to grab each other's accounts and customers and see what each other are up to. So all users and teams sit within the business units. But how do we specify what users see, what records the users have access to? That's done via security roles, and this hasn't changed. The security role kind of setup hasn't really changed since I started using Dynamics in 2009. So this will be familiar to a lot of you. So it's worth noting that every user, in order to access the system, must be assigned a security role. If they don't have a security role, then they won't be able to access the system. And so you can assign multiple security roles to users. And if a user has multiple security roles, they're cumulative. So it's the most access wins. So if a user has a security role that gives organizational read access to accounts, and a security role that doesn't give access to accounts, they've got read access to the accounts table. And if we look at what we've got in the security roles, we've got a list of tables down the left-hand side here. These are all the tables formerly known as entities in the Dataverse. You've got tabs along the top, and they just kind of group the entities. And then we've got these privileges. So it tells you create, read, write, delete, append to, and you've also got share and assign on there as well, outside of that screenshot. And most of them are quite self-explanatory. Append and append to, sometimes people get mixed up with that. So append means that you can associate rows or records in that table to rows in another table via a relationship. And append to means that you can associate rows in another table to rows in this table via a relationship. And I sometimes get them mixed up the wrong way around. And the security roles are configured by changing the kind of segments of these little, I call them pies, because you add slices to the pie. And we're very lucky that Microsoft give you a key when you're configuring them down the bottom. It's quite hard to see that, but if we zoom in again, this kind of half pie here means that they've got business unit access. So that's they can access all records within the business unit. The no slices of the pie, they can't access. So say read, they can't read any records in the organisation at all. The one slice here, that means that they have access to records owned by them. And I'll look at the owner field when I'm doing the demo, and I'll explain the owner field a bit more. And you've got another one which is not in that screenshot, which is 3/4 of the pie, and that's the current business unit. So the business unit that they belong to, you'll see records within that business unit and all other child business units. So it kind of filters down. So if you've got someone in a sales manager in the sales business unit, they'll be able to see records owned by both the sales team 1 and sales team 2 users. And this is just one more thing before I move on to security roles. The course, the official courseware makes specific reference to this. So to these security roles, these are some default security roles: system administrator, system customizer, and environment maker. And so system administrator gives full permission to everything and configuration. System customizer, full access to all custom tables and row level privileges of some variety. And environment maker, they can create new resources associated with the environment. So they don't really have record access. They just create resources associated to the environment. And again, there just seemed to be a lot of emphasis on these 3 roles, which would kind of suggest that it's potentially got brought up, but they're assessing on that. And important to know. So you've got teams as well. So you've got users and teams. Users can be part of teams. So a team is a group of users. And there's 2 different types of teams: owner teams and access teams. Owner teams can be assigned security roles. So you have a team, you add users to the team who do maybe a similar functionality, you need similar privileges, and you add a security role to that team. And the security role filters down to all the users, so they have the access that security role provides. Access teams are a bit different, and I'll show you an example of access teams in a second. Access teams don't have security roles, and they can't own records either, although records can be shared with access teams. And access teams what you need to know about them is that access teams allow you to explicitly share records with users. Because it's best to show you that as an example. And that's one of the examples I'll move on and show you how you configure access teams and access team templates, because they can be quite handy. You then get another level of security, which is a bit more granular, which is column level security, formerly known as field level security. And that allows you to configure security on individual columns. So this record here, it's a very sensitive field here, Mumsy's phone number, it's blocked out. So as a user, I've got access to that record and everything else that's on the record, but there might be a bit of information, credit cards in the Dataverse anyway, but maybe some sensitive information, security passwords, security questions, things like that you would want to restrict specifically for users. And the way you manage them is you set up a profile and you can add users into that profile, so it's done completely separate from the roles. And then you've got hierarchy security. So this allows you, as a manager, it allows you access to your subordinates' rows. So when they've got, so if I'm a manager, if I don't have access to, full access to accounts, but one of my subordinates that reports to me has access to an account, then I also have access to that account using hierarchy security. And then we've got data loss prevention policies. I couldn't see a lot in the security section about data loss prevention policies. I included it because it's part of the kind of security section within the exam objectives, and it's worth noting because it's reasonably new. It allows you to find connectors that have access to specific business data. So this bit here, these are like buckets that or categories that you can put connectors in. So you're flowing your Power Apps connectors, you can assign them to business, non-business, or blocked. And again, I'll show you where that is, and I'll explain a bit about that, and what the difference between non-business and business blocked is. So let's move on to securing the Dataverse. I'm going to put the PowerPoint slides away and have a look at some security roles and some users. I've set up 4 users. They are these people here. It's bonus points if you can guess the users. So we've got Duchess, Elliot, Judy, part of sales team 1, and Robin. So they're my users that I've got set up. Duchess is the boss. She's the CEO. She's the system admin. Elliot's the sales manager, and you've got Robin and Judy, who are the members of the sales team. And we will just flick to my demo environment. So this is a trial that I've set up. And the first thing we'll do, we're logged in. So this is me logged in as Duchess, the CEO, the system admin. And the first thing we'll do is go to the Power Platform Admin Center. If you go to the Power Platform Admin Center, you get to the environment. Click on the environment. And then go to settings, and we're going to have a look at the business units that we've got configured in here. So it's in the users and permissions section, and it's in business units. So like I said, we have this is our top level, so this gets named automatically. So that's our top level business unit. As you can see, there's no parent. If I go in there, we'll be doing a lot of switching between classic and modern interface in this one. A lot of this stuff still in looks like CRM 2011. So users in this business unit, we can see that every user is in the default business unit, unless other specified. So when you create a user, it automatically gets added to the default business unit, and it's you that has to assign the user somewhere else. I haven't added any teams because teams are just a bit like users. But Duchess is the administrator, and she's in the top level business unit. And the business units underneath that, we've got sales, HR, and finance. They're the 2 kind of tier 2 business units. And the one we're going to be interested in for this demo is sales. And sales also has 2 business units underneath it, team 1, team 2. And it's got a user, Elliot. So I'll show you how to assign the users to a business unit in a second. It's got Elliot in there. And if we go into team 1 and users, we've got Judy, one of our sales teams. Team 2 should have Robin. There's Robin. He's in there too. In order to change a business unit to a user, just while I'm in here, I'm not going to do it, but I'll show you. You go into the user record, and you have to. Where is it? It's usually up there. You can change it. There's usually a button up here that says change business unit. Might have to do it from the grid. If I go into the users section, and so look for Elliot. I've noticed that my security rules are changing as well. Yeah, so this is the button I was looking for here. If you select the user there, you can click change business unit, and it used to be on the form. I'm not sure if it's now on the modern interface. So that's how you change business unit. It's worth knowing that when you change business unit, it will unassign all the security rules from that user, so you'll have to go in and put them back in. So let's have a look at Elliot and the security rules that are assigned to Elliot. So as you've seen there, I opened up settings, users from Power Platform Admin again, and I manage users in Dynamics 365. You can, which I've just noticed, sometimes click that and you'll get an edit on some of the screens. Then normally managing users in Dynamics 365 will bring up the list of users. If we go into, I'm going to Elliot, because that's changing, select Elliot and click Manage Roles, you can see that he has the basic user role and the environment maker role. And those are the default roles that are applied to that user account as soon as it's created. As soon as it's assigned a Power Apps per user license, it'll get given those two security roles. Remember, this is us just in Power Apps. We're not using Dynamics 365 at the moment, but it's very similar. So Elliot has two security roles, and let's have a look at the accounts that Elliot can see and the difference between the difference. So let's look at the difference between the accounts that Elliot can see and what Duchess can see. So we're logged in as Duchess, and I've created a model-driven app just called Basic App, and she's got accounts and contacts. That's all that's in this app. For accounts, you can see the owner field is all set to me. The owner field is very important because that determines your permissions on that record. So I'm the owner of all these accounts, and that means that they reside within my business unit. If I pull up Elliot's view, so I'm in the same app, he doesn't have access to any accounts, and I hit refresh, he just doesn't see any of the accounts, because again, if we look at the security role, and to look at the security roles, we go to back to the Power Platform Admin Center, go to settings, security roles. The two that he had were basic user and the environment maker one. The environment maker one doesn't contain access to like accounts and contacts and things like that. It has some other permissions. But if we open up the basic user security role, we can see what access that has. Let's see if I can edit in here. Yeah. Again, switching between classic and modern interface sometimes takes a wee while. So this is a security role. It's got a name, business unit that it resides in, and then we've got some behaviour we can configure for when it's assigned to a team. We're going to leave that alone for this session. And if we look at our tabs along the top, everything's categorised into core records. Then these were the original first-party apps, customer service and sales tabs. So you find service will have some knowledge base articles. If you've got Dynamics 365, it'll have cases. You've got custom entities, which contain more than custom entities now, because any solution that Microsoft releases normally contains some sort of custom entity in there. We have core records down here, and these are all the little pies that specify what level access for the records. If we scroll right down the bottom, we also have this other section, which is miscellaneous privileges. So things like bulk delete, there's export to Excel is in there normally somewhere. It's impossible. I don't know anybody that knows all of these off by heart because they get added. New ones get added all the time. But as long as you know the basics and how they work, then that'll be fine. So have a look at a security role and look at the entity or table called account. We can see that they've got one slice of the pie across the board except share. So that means that he can share any record in the organisation, whether it's owned by him or not, but he can't read records that aren't owned by him. So if we look at the one slice of the pie, tie it up to the key down there, we've got user, that means that he can only see accounts that are owned by him. So let's amend this role to look at all accounts. So we're going to read all accounts that are in the business unit. Actually, before we do that, we'll assign some accounts out and just look at how they are sitting at the moment before we make any changes. So we'll go to active accounts. I'm going to give Elliot, using the assign button, an ASDEC account. We'll give Judy futuristic. Another bonus point if you can name where these are from. And then what was the other one? Robin. So I've given these accounts to individual users. So let's have a look and see if we can see any accounts. If we open up Elliot and hit refresh, he can now see the account because he's the owner of the account. And that should be the same for everyone because they've all share the same security role, which means that they can see records that are owned by them and the owner is specified by this field, then they can see any accounts that are assigned to them. So if we just check the other ones, that's in some contacts. Yeah, industrial, and refresh that. Judy. Okay, so let's amend the security role to show all accounts within the business unit. So back to Duchess, back to the Power Platform Admin Center. There's the security role there. So add another slice to the pie. They've got half a pie now. They can, if I save that, we can now see all records within the business unit. And what we'd expect to happen there is not much change because, so Elliot, who's the manager, and he's got two child business units underneath him, but because those users reside in those business units and we can only see records in our own business unit, we don't expect to see any more records, and it's the same for the other users. If, however, we then change the security role to look at all accounts in the current business unit plus any child business units, we expect to see Elliot have access to all those accounts, all his child business unit accounts, because those child business units, those users reside within those business units and they come under Elliot's business unit. So let's go back to Elliot and we'll refresh. And there we go. We can now see those other two users. And there's other two records owned by those two users. So that's a brief overview of the security roles. There is some more to it as well, but I'm going to skip on to access teams. Because access teams work a bit different. You've got a standard team, which is a group of users. Now, a team can be an owner of a record, and a team can have a security role assigned to it, but access teams are a bit different. So to use access teams with records, you have to enable the table for the access team. To do that, you need to go into the Maker Studio. So remember, you can't create an access team. You have to, it's created automatically in the background, but it allows you to explicitly give users access to records that they wouldn't normally access. So if we go to account, and I've already enabled the account for access teams. I'll just show you how it's done. If I go to settings and more settings, collaboration, and allow auto create access teams. So I've checked that box to enable that to auto create access teams. And we'll cancel that. And so once you create the access team, you have to create an access team template, because then you can add users to that account and they'll have access to it. Before I do that as well, I'm just going to assign Judy's record, sorry, Robin's record back to the Duchess. I'll go into the Duchess user account again, and I'm just going to take these ones back. So they're all mine. And then if I go into Robin, they won't be able to access anything. Oops. And neither will Judy. So they can't access, they don't have access to view any accounts anymore because I, as a Duchess, own them. But I'll create an access team template next. So as the Duchess in the Power Platform Admin Center, I'll go back to environment so that you can see where I get them. Now I couldn't, don't think you can get to it through the the modern interface. We'll see if we can try it. Yeah, you can. So in the environment, you go to settings and you go to templates, and you have this access team templates section. And this is the access team for my accounts, full access. So you create these by clicking new. If we go in and check what's in there. So we're saying accounts with full access, you specify the permissions that you want the users to have when they gain access to the access team, and you specify the entity, and that's all you configure when you create the new access team template. The next thing to do, in order to give users permission to that, is you need to add a subgrid to the table form. So if we go back into our model-driven app and I open up an account, that's one's assigned to Elliot, that's the wrong one. That's one that's assigned to me, so that's futuristic account. I've got a subgrid here, and you add that the same way as you would add on any other subgrid through the form. I'll show you how that's done as well if I go back to the Maker Studio, because you add the subgrid, but there's a relationship for the access team that you add. Again, I might have to switch to Classic in order to do this. So that's your subgrid there. Can you do this? Yeah, so that's the default view that you have to choose there. There's actually another drop down that comes up. If I switch to Classic, I can show you that. So yeah, so you're looking at user records, and then the default view is the associated record team members. And then once you select this associated team members view, you get this additional drop down, which is a team template, and that allows you to select your team template. So back to my app, and I'm on my futuristic account. Remember, I'm the owner. So if I go into Judy, so this is Robin, who doesn't have access to any accounts because they don't own the accounts, and they don't have the social security role doesn't permit them access to the accounts either, unless they're owned by them. But if I add Robin to that subgrid, I can specifically grant Robin access to that record. So you're accessing the record, but not through the security rules. It bypasses the security rules. I'll show you Robin. And now I can do whatever's determined at the access team level to that record, despite not being covered in the security rules. I can go in there and I can read, edit, delete, if I want to, that record. So it's something to watch out for when adding access teams. So the next thing I'll cover is column level security. So I've also got contact form in my basic app. And if I open up the contacts form as Robin, can't see any contacts, but I'll assign one to him. Let's assign a Tudor Paul to Robin so that they can access them. Back to Robin again. See, there's so many different screens and profiles set up here. So I've got access to that contact. I can go in there because I'm the owner, but I can't access this security enabled column, this Mumsy's phone number. It's starred out. I can't read it and I can't write to it. So let's have a look at how that's enabled as well. It's enabled through the Maker interface again to begin with. So back to Riches, my system admin, and let's go back to the table. And if I go to settings, let's just go back to the basic app. Still getting used to the, oh, there we go. That's it there. So we're in the account settings. We can expand that, and it's in one of these ones here. Wait a second. Sorry, that's it. Sorry, it's not on the entity, it's on the field. It's in the contact record and on the field. So if I go in the contact record and I go to Mumsy's phone number field, we've got enable column level security. So as soon as you tick that box, that enables the column level security, and you'll see a little when you look at it on the form, you'll see a little key next to it. So if I open up that, so regardless of whether you've got access to it or not, you have this little key next to it, and that tells you that column level security is enabled on that field. So how do you give users access to that field? Well, you create what's called a column level security profile. Now, again, they aren't in the modern interface yet. So I'll show you how to get, I've opened this up in the background, but to get to it, if you're in a model-driven app, you want to get to the classic admin interface, just click the settings and then advanced settings, and it'll open this up. And it's in security, and you've got these field security profiles. It's still called field security profiles. And this is the super users profile that I've set up. You always get one by default for system admins, but you create a new field level security profile. I've already created one called super users, and you can add people, users and teams to that profile. So the profile gets given a name, a description. You can add teams to it, or you can add users to it. So I've added Elliot as a super user in the column level security profile, or field level security profile as it's still called. All this name changes confusing me. So Elliot's a super user. You also set the field permissions, so all the fields who have field level security enabled will appear in this list, and you can specify whether you read, update, or create records populating that field. So you specify the permissions for the field there for these users or teams. So if I assign a contact to Elliot and allow him to view that record, back to my model-driven app, I'll just use EdTutor Paul again. Let's assign it to Elliot so that Elliot has access to that record. Because Elliot is in the super users field level security profile, he should have access to Mumsy's phone number. He's got read access to it, so he can't write to it, but he has access to it. So that's how field level securities work. But hierarchy level security is, and if we go back to the Duchess again, and the Power Platform Admin Center, and it's in users and permissions. And if we click hierarchy security, again, it's even changed quite a lot since I last did it, but you enable it and you can figure the manager hierarchy, and you can exclude entities from it as well. But that's where it's configured. And as I said, I've not used it. I've used it once in 11 years, so maybe I've just not had the right business requirements for it. DLP, so data loss prevention policies, it's quite a new section. So it's part of the Power Platform Admin Center again. It allows you to categorize your connectors. So if I go to the Power Platform Admin Center, which I'm in now, I click this data policies button, I can create a new data policy and give it a name. Policy. And we see our 3 buckets. We've got business, non-business, and blocked. This is a list of our connectors. So by default, they're all in non-business. But I can move them to, so let's block that one. Move that over to block. Blocked means that when your makers come to build their apps and their flows, they can't access those connectors. Non-business is almost like, so business is, think of it as business data. So connectors that you can build apps and flows with that connect to your business's data, and thinking non-business as personal data. So connectors that connect to non-business data, personal data. Now, the reason you can separate them is because if I'm building a flow that uses connectors or Power App that use connectors within the business bucket or category, I can't use this non-business connectors in that same Power App or flow. So you're trapped down to a bucket. So again, create a Power App. Say we've got Twitter in the non-business category, and we've got Salesforce in the business category. I can't use Salesforce and Twitter within the same Power App or flow, and that's how it works. Like I said, with these, other than showing users, training users how to use them and where they are, I've not had much experience in implementing them, because usually you just give them to the client and they pick it up and run with it. They've not come back with many questions regarding these categories or data loss prevention policies. And then you just click through the next. You can set it down to multiple environments, one certain environment, or all environments. So that's at a tenant level as well. Let's just do add multiple. Select that environment, add to policy, and click next. I'm not going to create the policy at the moment, but that's data loss prevention policies that, again, it's worth being aware of when you're implementing security, particularly in large organizations. And so let's pull up our final slides, because we've got a few next steps. That's essentially it for security. The best way to learn it, if you want to learn more, so the next steps are set up a trial and then set up some users with security roles. It's the only way really to go and secure the Dataverse, because you can read there's a lot of content on it, a lot of documentation on it, but without actually just setting up a trial, put a couple of some dummy data into it and setting up user profiles, and basically what I did, set up a Chrome profile or an Edge profile for each of your user personas, and practice, assign some security roles to them, and go through each of the different security methods that you can use to secure the Dataverse. So that's it as far as the presentation goes. Does anybody got any questions? I'll stop the recording now as well.